I might do that, Barbarino, if your study group would write a report on censorship, the effect on the male teenager.
Yeah, well, Barbarino don't write no reports for no one.
Barbarino don't write no reports? What does Barbarino do besides give orders?
They were America's favorite classroom until everything fell apart. Welcome Back, Kotter went from a top 20 hit to total disaster in just 4 years. Why? John Travolta abandoned ship for movie fame. Gabe Kaplan was forced out after a nasty behind-the-scenes war. And the shocking finale that fans still call the worst ever. For the first time, we're exposing what really killed TV's most beloved sitcom. Gabe Kaplan's journey to Welcome Back, Kotter started long before Hollywood. In the late 1960s, he was performing stand-up comedy, turning his high school memories into routines that made people laugh. One of his most famous bits, Holes and Mellow Rolls, described life at New Utrecht High School in Brooklyn. His stories focused on the kids in remedial classes, the so-called troublemakers and underachievers who were actually full of humor and personality. He knew them well because he had been one of them. Kaplan wasn't an honor roll student. He was a sweathog before the word even existed. Teachers saw his classmates as lost causes, but he saw something else. They were smart in ways that didn't fit into textbooks. They had quick comebacks, street smarts, and an ability to turn anything into a joke. Years later, when Kaplan started doing stand-up, he realized those memories were pure gold. The characters he talked about on stage weren't just random students from his past. They were unforgettable. And they became the heart of Welcome Back, Kotter. The show was more than just comedy. It had a message. When it premiered on September 9, 1975, it immediately stood out. At its core was Gabe Kotter, a teacher returning to his old high school to work with kids just like the ones he had grown up with. The Sweatthogs were rowdy and unpredictable, but Kotter understood them. He had been in their shoes. He knew what it felt like to be underestimated. And that connection made all the difference. The reason Welcome Back, Kotter felt so real was simple. Its characters were based on real people. Kaplan pulled them straight from his own high school experience. Vinnie Barbarino, played by John Travolta, was inspired by two guys Kaplan knew, Eddie Licari and Ray Barbarino. Freddie Boom Boom Washington came from a real person named Freddie Ferdy Payton. Juan Epstein was based on a student known as Epstein the Animal. Even Arnold Horshack had a real-life counterpart. That's why the show worked. These weren't just over-the-top sitcom characters. They felt real because they were real. Vinnie had confidence and charm. Freddie had effortless cool. Juan was tough and street smart. Arnold was the oddball with a laugh no one could forget. Together, they formed a group that was hilarious, unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. Kaplan didn't just create these characters for laughs. He wanted to honor the students he grew up with. The system had written them off, but he knew they had something special. By bringing their stories to life, Welcome Back, Kotter challenged stereotypes. It proved that just because someone struggled in school didn't mean they weren't smart or capable. Kaplan didn't build the show alone. He worked with producer Alan Sachs, and together they created something that felt both funny and meaningful. The 1970s were a time of change. Racial tensions, economic struggles, and education inequality were all part of daily life. Kaplan and Sachs wanted a show that reflected those realities without being heavy-handed. The key was balance, mixing humor with moments of real emotion. When Welcome Back, Kotter premiered on September 9, 1975, not everyone believed it would work. A sitcom about unruly high school students called the Sweatthogs and their wisecracking teacher seemed like a risky idea. ABC executives weren't sure if audiences would connect with it. Critics had doubts too, but viewers proved them all wrong. The show became one of ABC's highest-rated programs in its first season. By February 1976, it was a certified hit, drawing millions of viewers each week. By the end of its first season, Welcome Back, Kotter wasn't just popular. It was a phenomenon. It ranked among ABC's top programs and helped the network compete with CBS and NBC. Ratings remained strong for several years, though they started to decline by the fourth season. Even so, the show had already left a lasting mark. One of the biggest reasons Welcome Back, Kotter became so memorable was its catchphrases. Vinnie Barbarino's "Up your nose with a rubber hose" was everywhere. Kids repeated it in school hallways. It was the perfect comeback. Funny, but not too mean. Arnold Horshack's "Ooh, ooh," and Freddie Washington's smooth "Hi there" became just as famous. Each catchphrase fit the character perfectly. They weren't just random lines. They helped define the show's personality. The influence of Welcome Back, Kotter stretched beyond TV. The Sweatthogs style, leather jackets, bell-bottom jeans, and open-collared shirts became a trend. The theme song "Welcome Back," performed by John Sebastian, became a hit. It topped the Billboard charts in 1976. The song's nostalgic lyrics fit the show's theme of returning home. Even years later, these elements remained a part of American pop culture. For John Travolta, Welcome Back, Kotter was life-changing. Before playing Vinnie Barbarino, he had only a few small TV roles, but the show made him a star. His mix of charm and comedy made Barbarino one of the most popular characters. His catchphrases and mannerisms became iconic. The attention helped him land his breakthrough movie role in Saturday Night Fever in 1977. His performance as Tony Manero earned him an Academy Award nomination. The next year, he starred in Grease, one of the highest-grossing musicals of all time. Few TV actors made the jump to movie stardom so successfully. Travolta often credited Kotter for launching his career. Even after decades in Hollywood, Vinnie Barbarino remained one of his most beloved roles. The show's popularity led to a wave of merchandise. Fans could buy lunchboxes, t-shirts, and even board games featuring the Sweatthogs. At the time, this level of merchandising was rare for a TV sitcom. It showed just how deeply audiences connected with the show. Promotions and contests kept fans engaged between episodes. Some lucky winners even got to meet the cast. In September 1975, Welcome Back, Kotter premiered across the country. But in Boston, something unusual happened. WCVB-TV, the city's ABC affiliate, refused to air it. At the time, Boston was caught in the middle of the school busing crisis. A court-ordered desegregation plan was forcing students to attend schools outside their neighborhoods, sparking protests, riots, and widespread racial tension. The station feared that a sitcom about a diverse high school classroom might add to the unrest. The show followed Gabe Kaplan, a teacher returning to his Brooklyn alma mater to teach a group of misfit students known as the Sweatthogs. The cast included African-American Freddie "Boom Boom" Washington, Puerto Rican Jew Juan Epstein, Italian-American Vinnie Barbarino, played by John Travolta, and Jewish Gabe Kaplan himself. It was a comedy, but WCVB-TV worried that its portrayal of an integrated classroom might provoke anger in a city already on edge. Boston's schools were struggling with violence tied to the desegregation efforts, and some feared that Kotter's goofy students might encourage real-life trouble in local schools. Gabe Kaplan, the actor who played Kotter, was furious. He called the decision the worst kind of censorship and argued that the show wasn't controversial at all. It was just a light-hearted sitcom. But in Boston, even a comedy could be seen as a threat. The city's busing crisis had turned schools into battlegrounds. Protests often turned violent, and racial divisions had never been sharper. Some thought an optimistic portrayal of integration might give a false impression of what was really happening. Others worried that Kotter's mischievous students would glamorize bad behavior at a time when teachers were already struggling to maintain order. The controversy put WCVB-TV in the national spotlight. Across the country, people were watching Kotter and loving it. Its theme song by John Sebastian was climbing the music charts. The show was funny, relatable, and nothing like the political firestorm that Boston's ABC affiliate had feared. By October 1975, after just 5 episodes, WCVB-TV gave in and put the show on the air. The decision came down to 2 things. First, the show was a massive success. Ratings were strong, and there was no evidence that it was causing problems anywhere else. Second, as people became more familiar with Kotter, it became clear that the Sweatthogs were more like slapstick comedy characters than real-life delinquents. Gabe Kaplan and Robert Heggies, who played Juan Epstein, had based the Sweatthogs on Groucho Marx-style humor, rather than actual street kids. The show wasn't making a political statement. It was just making people laugh. Once Kotter aired in Boston, the controversy quickly faded. Audiences embraced the show just like they had in the rest of the country. The debate, however, revealed something bigger about television's role in shaping public perception. WCVB-TV had worried that Kotter would stir up an already divided city. But in the end, the audience decided for them. The show wasn't about race or politics. It was about an underdog teacher, a group of lovable misfits, and the idea that humor could bring people together. When Welcome Back, Kotter aired in 1975, it quickly became one of the most talked-about sitcoms on television. It was funny, but it also tackled serious topics like teenage pregnancy, racial stereotypes, and juvenile delinquency. Some people loved it. Others thought it was inappropriate for family viewing. Some episodes were even banned, sparking debates about what was acceptable on TV. One of the biggest controversies came from how the show handled teenage pregnancy. Some episodes featured young mothers who found ways to balance school and parenthood. Critics argued that this made teen pregnancy seem like just another challenge rather than a serious issue. The same debate later surrounded shows like 16 and Pregnant in 2009. Some stations refused to air these episodes, and a few advertisers pulled their support. But all the controversy only made the show more popular. People wanted to see what the fuss was about. Ethnic stereotypes were another major issue. Each member of the Sweatthogs had a personality based on exaggerated traits linked to their background. Juan Epstein, the Puerto Rican Jew, was always getting into trouble. He joked about assault being his favorite subject. Freddie Washington was a smooth-talking black athlete who relied on basketball to secure his future. Arnold Horshack was the oddball outsider with a strange laugh who became the target of endless jokes. These characters made people laugh, but they also made some uncomfortable. Critics argued that the humor reinforced negative stereotypes rather than challenging them. Washington's characters sometimes made jokes about ghetto trash. Epstein's storylines often referenced crime in a way that played into harmful ideas about Hispanic youth. Even Mr. Kotter himself, played by Gabe Kaplan, wasn't exempt from controversy. His jokes often targeted his students and touched on sensitive issues like race, religion, and poverty. Some viewers saw this as a reflection of real life, while others thought the show should have been more careful with its humor. Another big concern was juvenile delinquency. The Sweatthogs weren't just misfits, they were troublemakers. They skipped class, disrespected teachers, and came up with wild schemes. Some educators worried that the show would encourage bad behavior among young viewers. In the 1970s, juvenile crime rates were rising. Arrests of minors increased throughout the decade, and many people blamed television for making rebellion seem fun. Some school officials even called for a boycott. But the producers never intended for the Sweatthogs to be taken seriously. They based the characters on comedy legends like the Marx Brothers. The idea was to make their antics so exaggerated that no one would see them as real-life role models. When Barbarino joked about cheating on a test or bribing a teacher, it wasn't supposed to be a lesson. It was just absurd humor. Over time, audiences understood this, and the controversy died down. Still, reactions to the show depended on where you lived. In Boston, for example, racial tensions were high in the mid-1970s because of forced school desegregation. Some local stations banned Welcome Back, Kotter, out of fear that its diverse classroom setting might add to the unrest. In other parts of the country, the show was a massive hit. By 1976, it was one of ABC's top-rated programs. Marcia Strassman had high hopes when she joined Welcome Back, Kotter, but those hopes faded fast. She played Julie Kotter, the wife of Gabe Kaplan, but her role barely went beyond reacting to his jokes. Right from the start, she felt like an afterthought. By season 2, she was openly saying she wished the show would get canceled. Her frustration wasn't just about the writing, she also struggled with Gabe Kaplan. Some days he was warm and friendly. Other days, he was distant and hard to work with. In a 1978 People magazine interview, she called him unpredictable. Things got worse as time went on. By season 4, the producers tried giving her more to do. They made Julie Kotter the vice principal of Buchanan High, but it was too late. Strassman had already checked out. To make things worse, producer James Komack kept stirring up trouble. He reportedly told Kaplan and Strassman misleading things about each other, making their already tense working relationship even worse. Even though her time on Kotter was frustrating, Strassman didn't let it define her career. She went on to star in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in 1989 and landed roles on shows like Booker, proving she was more than just Gabe Kotter's sitcom wife. But she wasn't the only one who had problems with Komack. The biggest battle behind the scenes was between Komack and Gabe Kaplan. The show was based on Kaplan's real-life experiences, and he wanted it to be about something real. He saw it as a story about education and second chances, but Komack wanted a straight comedy. The tension hit a breaking point in season 3 when Komack fired several of Kaplan's favorite writers and replaced them with his own. Kaplan was furious, but Komack controlled everything. By season 4, Kaplan had enough. He barely showed up, appearing in only 8 of the 23 episodes that season. The writers explained it by promoting Kotter to vice principal, but that just made the show feel even more disconnected from its original idea. Komack didn't just control the creative direction, he controlled the cast. Just like he did with Kaplan and Strassman, he reportedly spread rumors among cast members, keeping everyone at odds. By season 4, everything was falling apart. Ratings crashed, and in August 1979, Welcome Back, Kotter was canceled. Despite the drama, the show had one major success. It launched John Travolta into superstardom. Travolta played Vinnie Barbarino, the leader of the Sweatthogs, and he was the breakout star from the very beginning. By season 3 in 1977, his movie career had taken off, and he was already appearing less frequently. His first big film was Carrie in 1976, but Saturday Night Fever in 1977 changed everything. It earned him an Academy Award nomination and turned him into a Hollywood star. By season 4 of Kotter, Travolta was credited as a special guest star and only appeared in 10 of the first 15 episodes before leaving entirely. His last episode had Vinnie Barbarino delivering a baby in an elevator. a strange farewell for the show's most popular character. Travolta's exit left a huge hole. The producers tried to fill it by introducing a new character, Beau Delabarre, played by Stephen Shortridge. But Beau never connected with the audience, and without Travolta, the show lost its biggest draw. Travolta's departure wasn't just a turning point for Kotter, it was a turning point for television. He proved that a TV actor could become a movie star, opening the door for others to do the same. While his exit sped up Kotter's downfall, it also cemented his place in Hollywood. Even if the show had avoided all the behind-the-scenes problems, it still had another issue. It was getting harder to believe the Sweatthogs were high school students. When Kotter debuted in 1975, John Travolta was already 21. By season 4, in 1978, he was 25, and Ron Palillo, who played Arnold Horshack, was 30. It became impossible to ignore how much older they looked. Other shows had the same problem. Beverly Hills 90210 dealt with aging actors playing teenagers, but in Kotter, it was worse. The classroom setting made it even harder to suspend disbelief. To adjust, the writers shifted the focus to Buchanan High's staff and new characters, but nothing worked. Moreover, teachers' unions kept a close watch on how educators were portrayed and even had representatives visit the set to make sure the show didn't make teachers look bad. The concern was simple. If Gabe Kaplan, a teacher who had once been a remedial student himself, was shown as incompetent or irresponsible, it could hurt the public's respect for real educators. This kind of oversight wasn't normal for television, but it reflected a larger debate happening in the 1970s about how authority figures were portrayed in the media. Teachers' unions worried that if Kotter was too much of a jokester, audiences might see real teachers as unprofessional. Gabe Kaplan, who played Kotter and also co-created the show, didn't like the interference. He once joked to reporters, "Did they have junkmen on set to protect their image during Sanford & Son?" It was a fair point. No one was monitoring how other professions were portrayed, so why should teachers be treated differently? Even though Kaplan was frustrated, the union's involvement may have helped the show in the long run. Kotter was funny and unconventional, but he was also shown as a teacher who cared about his students and wanted them to succeed. The Sweatthogs got into trouble, but their behavior was treated as harmless fun rather than serious delinquency. The balance between comedy and heart made the show stand out, and it avoided backlash that could have hurt its success. As Kotter went on, it faced a problem that most high school shows eventually run into. The actors were getting too old for their roles. By season 4, John Travolta was 25, and Ron Palillo, who played Arnold Horshack, was almost 30. It was getting harder to believe they were still high school students. Kaplan came up with a solution. Instead of pretending the characters were still teenagers, why not move the show to a community college? The change would let the characters grow up naturally, while keeping their personalities and comedic chemistry. It also would have opened the door to new storylines about young adulthood, a topic sitcoms rarely explored at the time. Kaplan's idea made sense, but the producers didn't want to change the setting. They believed the high school environment was too important to the show's identity, and they worried viewers wouldn't accept a new direction. Instead of following Kaplan's suggestion, they tried other ways to boost ratings. They introduced new characters, hoping fresh faces would bring new energy to the series. But the changes didn't work, and Kaplan, frustrated with the creative direction, started pulling away. By season 4, he was barely appearing on screen, and before the show was canceled in 1979, he was gone completely. Looking back, some fans and critics believe Kotter could have lasted longer if it had evolved the way Kaplan wanted. One of the biggest missteps in the later seasons was the introduction of Angie Grabowski. played by Melanie Haller. She was supposed to be a female version of the Sweatthogs. Tough but likable. Someone who could bring a new dynamic to the group. But audiences didn't connect with her. Compared to original characters like Vinnie Barbarino or Juan Epstein, Angie felt underdeveloped. Fans saw her as an afterthought rather than a natural addition to the cast. She wasn't the only failed attempt to shake things up. Stephen Shortridge joined the show as Beau de la Barre, a smooth-talking Southerner who was meant to fill gaps left by departing characters. But like Angie, Beau struggled to win over fans. By the late 1970s, audiences were already drifting away, and these new additions weren't enough to bring them back. Welcome Back, Kotter started as a hit. It told the story of a teacher returning to his tough Brooklyn high school to teach a group of misfit students called the Sweatthogs. The mix of humor and heart made it a favorite. It ranked 18th in its first season and climbed to 13th in its second. The average rating was 22.73. But things changed fast. By season 3, the show had dropped to 26th place. In season 4, it fell even further, landing at 78th, with a rating of just 14.83. One reason for the decline was the writing. The early seasons had fresh stories and relatable humor, but as time went on, the jokes felt repetitive. The characters didn't grow, and the high school antics became less believable. Fans who had been loyal from the start were losing interest. Another major problem was the cast. John Travolta, who played Vinnie Barbarino, became a movie star. With Saturday Night Fever in 1977 and Grease in 1978, he had little time for the show. In season 4, he appeared in only 10 episodes as a special guest star. Losing a fan favorite like Travolta was bad enough, but then the show lost its biggest star. Gabe Kaplan, who played Mr. Kotter, had creative disagreements with producer James Komack. Kaplan wanted the Sweatthogs to graduate and move on to community college, which would have kept the story fresh. Komack refused. Frustrated, Kaplan stepped back. In season 4, he appeared in just 6 episodes. With both Kaplan and Travolta mostly gone, the show lost its energy. ABC made things worse by changing the show's time slot. In its best years, Welcome Back, Kotter aired on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Before season 4, ABC moved it to Mondays at 8 p.m. to make room for Mork and Mindy. The shift confused loyal viewers and put the show up against stronger competition. Ratings collapsed. By season 4, the show had lost most of its audience. Another problem was creative fatigue. In the beginning, the show balanced comedy with real-life struggles. As the seasons went on, the writing relied more on slapstick. Fans who had loved the mix of humor and heart started tuning out. The introduction of new characters like Beau de la Barre and Angie Grabowski didn't help. They couldn't replace the magic of the original cast. Even behind-the-scenes changes, like giving Mr. Woodman a bigger role and introducing Kotter's twin daughters, felt forced. The show was running out of ideas. By the time the final episode aired on June 8, 1979, Welcome Back, Kotter was a shell of what it once was. The episode, The Breadwinners, focused on a fight between Freddie Boom Boom Washington and Juan Epstein over a part-time job at an antique shop. Epstein wanted the job, but Washington unknowingly took it first. The argument escalated, and Epstein challenged Washington to a boxing match. In classic sitcom style, they realized the fight was silly and made up. The episode ended with Washington keeping the job while Epstein conveniently found another one at the boxing gym. The finale didn't feel like a finale. There was no closure. Fans never got to see if the Sweatthogs graduated or what happened to them after high school. It felt like just another episode. By then, Travolta was barely in the show. Kaplan was almost completely absent. Without its biggest stars, the series faded away.